everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and this is Hangout number 100. Woohoo! I'm excited because that simply means I've been here since I do one a week. That means it's 2 years worth of Hangouts, which means the channel is still kicking. So, when you start a YouTube channel, you just don't know whether it's gonna make it or not, or whether you're just sort of gonna say, okay, enough of this, and disappear. But no, still here. So anyway, welcome everybody who is here for the 100th. Hi, Lila and Sarah, Michaela, LS, CJ, Bluebell Rose, Loretta is here. Now, it's funny. Somebody just told me, because I start going through the names, and then because everybody's chatting, I forget which name I've said. And somebody told me I should go to the top of the page, and there's 3 little dots. I click on that and I find out who's in the chat room. But apparently that's just for live shows on when you're on YouTube and you do live shows to the entire public, it's there. But I'm doing my lives on StreamYard for just patrons, and then it goes live later to everyone, but not live, but public to everyone. So I don't get the 3 little dots. So hi, everybody. Jamie's here. Beth is here. I'm just going to miss everybody's name now. Molly's here. Sky Ricky's here. If I'm not saying your name, it's because now I'm totally lost. But welcome. Thank you for being here. And if you're new to the channel and it's your first Hangout on the 100th, please do subscribe to the channel. It's an educational channel. I need the support. And if you'd like to be in the chat room with the patrons, please go to the link below. Join Patreon. It's $5 a month, and my patrons get to come to all the lives, which is at least 8 a month, and then we also have a nice community. So that's that. Let's go to the news. Oh, goodness. Anyway, thank you for coming back 2 hours later. This was scheduled 2 hours ago, but then my daughter says, "Oh, Mom, we're having a big, huge barbecue with everybody and the whole family and friends." And I'm like, could you have told me that like yesterday? So anyway, I moved it from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock Eastern time. So that's, no, no glass of wine. No, I had to have an orange crush during the barbecue, and I'm kind of feeling nauseous. I don't know if it's because too much grease was around or it's the orange crush. I don't feel so great, but I'm still here. So anyway, I want to go to the news, and I want to tell you this real important one. This is happening in my town. I don't know if you remember a while back, there was, we had a problem with loose zebras. We live in a Maryland suburb outside of Washington, D.C., Bowie and Upper Marlboro area. And this guy happened to have zebras, and they got loose. And so the police were chasing these zebras around for like a week. And my daughter, being part of the police force here, was thinking maybe she could get one and we could own a zebra, but we did not get one. But now there was a storm this weekend, and now we have something else on the loose. Now we have cows. They're on, as I keep saying, every news report, they're on the move. But he's so original. But here they are. They're literally walking through the neighborhood. And this has been like 3 or 4 days now, and they have not caught the cows. And I'm like, how can you not be able to catch cows? I mean, I understand the zebras because there's a lot of kind of more farmy areas out a little ways, and the zebras are fast like horses, but these are cows. I mean, they're lumbering through people's front yards. Look at this again. Is that not hysterical? They're just wandering through people's yards. I think it's really funny. I guess just 2 of them, but they haven't caught them yet. So we still have cows wandering about the neighborhood. Zebras and cows are serial killers. I hope not, but they're yes, they can be dangerous. And yeah, we already have on our mini farm, we have a donkey, a horse, 3 llamas, 2 alpacas, and a goat. So we're willing to have the zebra, but yeah, they can be a little high-spirited, shall we say. So looks like lightning fast cows, the gang going through the neighborhoods. Yeah, it's just so funny. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, that's just local bovine news. And we live as a suburb here. This is not really farm country. Although my neighbor does have cows, and it's because his daughters wanted cows, and so he got a cow, and then he got a bull, and now he's got 9 cows, and the children won't let him sell them for, for money, which he would make a lot of because they're now pets. So they got 9 pet cows. It's pretty funny. Anyway, to crime news. All right, somebody asked me about Carlee Russell. Yes, this is Carlee Russell. She's the one who ran off and claimed that she had been abducted after she chased a little toddler down the highway to save him. And here she is in her mugshot, and she's just smiling and pretty. So someone asked me, why is she doing that for the mugshot? Well, having seen her other photos and considering her quite, shall we say, possibly psychopathic personality, highly narcissistic, she loves attention. And the kind of crime she committed, which is a crime, which is to fake something that brings attention to you, fake being a victim. Sherry Papini, that kind of, I'm a victim. She also was supposedly abducted while she's out jogging. And then when she shows back up, she's been brutalized, and she has a story, and everybody goes, oh, poor baby. But she loves attention. And in her history, she had done some smaller things before that should have been the red flags, at least to the family and to the guy who married her. So Carlee Russell, I'm pretty sure, has had a history of doing attention-seeking things. So now here's the issue. So now she's getting her mugshot done, and of course, she's now moved on to the new attention-getting thing. And this is the problem when you have people who exhibit psychopathic behaviors, Munchausen syndrome type behaviors. The problem is, unless they get proper punishment, they're not that affected by the punishment they get as long as it brings them attention. And then they move on to a new game. So she's, okay, so you caught me. I'm now getting still attention. Oh, everybody's talking about me now. And so she apologizes through her lawyer. She has been charged with 2 misdemeanors, which bugs me because it should be a felony to do what she did. And 2 misdemeanors theoretically could add up to 2 years in prison or 2 years in jail. But I'm going to say that likely that's all going to get watered down, and she's going to get some crappy community service or something because it's a first-time offense. I don't know if it is, but I'm going to guess that may be the way it goes. But I did like what I heard from, let me see if I can find it, let me see if it's I don't know, I can't remember if he was a sheriff or the police chief. But he also is fed up, and he says he wants to change the law to make what she did a felony. And I totally agree with that. We need to stop this kind of fake victimization so the police don't waste their time, so that real victims don't get ignored. And yeah, make it a felony to do what she did. That's absolutely what should be done. Now, take, for example, this woman. Do I have a picture of her? Where's my picture? You know me and my missing pictures. Where's my missing picture? Nope, that's definitely not a female. Did my picture go missing again? I'm still going to be mad at myself. Hold on. Okay, sorry. I wanted to show this picture because here's another woman who just went missing. All right. I think that's her, isn't it? Yeah. I'm hoping I don't confuse one person with the other. Let me find the story about her. She went missing in our area, my area in Maryland, in Greenbelt, Maryland. And let me find the little story here. Hold on. I should have gone to that. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to lose everything today. That barbecue did me in, let me tell you. Where'd it go? Oh, man. Oh, here we go. Sorry. She's a teacher. Um, she's reported missing. I don't think that was her. Whoops. Wait a minute. Who did I just show you? Hold on a second. I don't think that was her. What happened to my picture of the woman I wanted to show you? Oh, that wasn't even her. Oops. Sorry, guys. I've lost my picture of her. She never came over. All right. She's a lovely woman. She looks like this. There she is. The old-fashioned method. Okay, there's the woman. A beloved elementary school teacher was reported missing. She enjoys going for walks in a park. Now, the location, she's turning 60 next month. Her name is Miriam Tour Silla. Turning 60 next month, was last seen in a condominium community in Greenbelt, Maryland, where she lived, and she was last seen at 8 p.m. She's 5'5", 135 pounds. Neighbors said she enjoyed walking in the Shrum Hills Park, which is directly located across from where she lives. And it's a small area. She teaches in the French immersion school. She's a third grade teacher. She told her son she was going for a walk before sunset prayer, but she never returned from her walk. They have been searching since then. They've got canine units out, missing posters are out. Everybody in the neighborhood is going crazy trying to find her. Says she takes medication she needs regularly, and nobody has seen her, at least not at the time I saw this article. Now, here's the problem. The first thing that pops into your mind is she really missing? Or did she just tell her son she was going for a walk and jump in somebody's car and disappear? And that's the problem, because on the heels of Carlee Russell, this woman, now we question, did she really go missing, or did she make herself go missing? And that's why we have to make this a felony, because it's not okay to joke around about stuff like that. Not okay. So I hope this woman's okay. But it's been a while. They haven't found her. It's like three days now. So I don't know what happened to her. And I haven't heard anything since. Let's see, when was this? Oh shit! Okay, I'm gonna actually check while we're on here. I'm just gonna check to see. Wait a minute. Where is it? I get too many things open here. That's the problem, and I can't find anything. See, I just had it in front of me. Totally, as my aunt used to say, discombobulated. It's a lovely, lovely term, but I think I am that today. For some reason, I just keep losing things. What the heck is wrong with me? All right. I won't find out today, but I want a felony on this one. But I do want to point out this other one, though. Okay, this Florida girl, she's 11 years old. She reported a fake abduction. Now, get this. She called 911. She sent a text to the dispatcher. She sent a text to the dispatcher claiming her friend had been abducted because of a YouTube challenge, and she thought it would be funny. So she sent a text about 9:45 a.m., claimed an armed male had kidnapped her friend. The girl told the dispatcher the kidnapper was driving a white van south on Interstate 95 and claimed she was following the van in a blue Jeep. Deputies from several departments and a helicopter were called in for the search. The girl continued to send texts for about 90 minutes, including a description of a suspect and claiming he was armed. Do you realize how dangerous this is? That's insane. She could get somebody killed. Anyway, they ended up tracking the phone I used to send the text, which led them to a home. The girl wasn't in a vehicle because she's 11 years old and she cannot drive, or apparently doesn't own a car. Although maybe she's the type that would carjack somebody's car at 11 years old. They found her at a home in Port Orange. They contacted the girl's father, who told them she was inside the home. As the girl walked up to the deputies, the phone rang with a call from the sheriff's office, and authorities say confirming she was sending the text. Oops. Now this is interesting. She's 11. She was charged with making a false police report concerning the use of a firearm in a violent manner, because she was threatening that some guy had a gun, which is a felony, and a misuse of 911, a misdemeanor. She was taken away in handcuffs and eventually to the regional juvenile detention center. So she got a stronger deal going there than good old Carlee. She's 11. But what kind of 11-year-old does that? And that's the problem. The deputy said this way, said to the girl, I'm telling you this right now, you're going to take this as a lesson at 11 years old, that if you do something stupid in the future, you're going to enjoy those cuffs. And she said, I'm not going to do it again. But what are they going to do with her? She's 11. It's going to be an interesting question. She hasn't the comprehension an adult did, or following someone's example. Yes, Carlee Russell is an adult. She knew exactly what she was doing. This is a child who, unfortunately, doesn't seem to have appropriate instruction in her life. Something is seriously wrong here. I cannot imagine my kids at 11 years old, my granddaughter at 11 years old, when she's 2 years from now, or myself, doing something like that. And she did it for an hour and a half. And what she was saying, she had to know. She's knowing helicopters are coming out. This is not a small thing. Okay? This is not small. I'm going to say this child has behavioral problems leading up to this. And this is one of the problems that people often say, well, yeah, they're young. Well, they are, but it's the same thing as having an 11-year-old boy rape a child and saying, well, his brain isn't formed yet. But what boy at 11 rapes another child? One has to wonder what else has been going on for those other years, and do they have a personality disorder, and are they dangerous? So, but yeah, I would say time to have her evaluated. Yeah, definitely. Wow. I was sitting in a yard of a psychopath who had kicked me out 3,000 miles from home. She called it burglary in progress. I was sitting on the stoop and they showed up, guns drawn. Not funny. Well, there you go. Not funny when it becomes you who become victimized by these whomever. If that girl, if they had seen a white van and anybody acting what they thought was suspicious because she's saying it's a white van and giving a description of the guy, and all of a sudden he's got guns drawn on him, and he says, hey, why would you do this? And they're like, well, we thought you had kidnapped a child. So it's pretty, yeah. The 6-year-old who shot his teacher. There's another little problematic one. Ooh. Well, I hope at least she doesn't have a phone in the future. She'll probably get a burner. She'll work her way around that one. But that's a scary thing. It really is. Yeah, that's why these things aren't funny. And these things aren't minor. It's the same thing with peeping Toms. People say, it's just a peeping Tom. There's no just a peeping Tom. Who does that? What man goes and hides and peeps into women's windows? I'm going to tell you, the guy who's on his way to being a rapist. That's who a peeping Tom is, because that's not normal behavior. I mean, we're not talking about maybe an 11-year-old boy who the next door neighbor lady's taking off her clothes and, not closing the curtains. And he's like, ooh, I'm not talking about that. But we're talking about, especially when we get to adults, not funny and not minor. So some things shouldn't be misdemeanors. I think we ought to take those peeping Toms up to felonies. But a lot of times they're just, don't do that again. And then the guy has like 20 peeping Tom things on his record. It's like, yeah, it's not okay. It's not okay. Okay, now I want to talk about, this is really fascinating to me. And this is going to point out something I have been, wait a minute, before I go there, because I want to talk about the Oregon serial serial homicide issues. But I do want to mention Preppy Dude. Okay, remember that dude, right? Yep, him. He went to prison, if you remember him, the Preppy Killer. He went to prison back in, when did he go? Let's see, when did he go back? Hold on a second, let me find when he went the first time. All right, now he's coming out, he just got out of prison. His name was Robert Chambers, and he was a pretty decent looking fellow, and that's why he was called the Preppy Killer, because he looked like a nice schoolboy, fairly decent looking fellow. Now, he went to prison in 1986. He was convicted of murdering a teenage girl. And this was a very irritating thing, because he got, how long? He served it. Let's see. He was convicted of murdering a teenage girl in Central Park in 1986. And now he ended up going back to prison on a drug charge. But I'm still bugged about he didn't get life for killing this girl. Now, he's more well known than his drug ended him up in prison again. But so the girl was 18 years old. Her name was Jennifer Levin. It was a very famous case. It happened when he was 20 and she was 18. A cyclist discovered Levin's strangled half-naked body on August 26, 1986, while riding through an area of Central Park behind the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Chambers was arrested in connection with the death and had claimed to the police that she died following a round of consensual, rough sex in the park. But the prosecutors argued that he had raped her and killed her. Jurors failed to reach a verdict after 9 days of deliberation, prompting prosecutors to strike a deal that Chambers plead guilty to the less 3. All right. You know, when a rapist simply claims and yet that is seemingly what happened. So he's in the park with her. Clearly she was raped, although he says it was consensual sex. And then during that consensual sex, he kills her. Now, the concept of rough sex, what does rough sex mean? All right. Choking, strangling. I forgot what the whole condition of the rough sex here was. But what's interesting to me is, when was the last time, I'm going to ask you if you've ever heard of this, because I've heard this rough sex story before. And when a girl ends up dead, he said, well, we were doing, whatever play we were, the breathing thing. And then she dies. When was the last time you ever heard of a female killing a male with a supposed rough sex? It always seems to be men killing women with rough sex. And of course, the woman's not alive to say, I didn't consent to that crap. So my opinion is like this. If you're having sex with a woman and you kill her, I don't care whether it's consensual to begin with or not. I would hope that you wouldn't go out on a date with somebody and you consent to having sex with them. And while you're having sex, they choke you to death. What? That's manslaughter? I'm sorry. I consider that murder. Even if you weren't raped, it's still, my opinion, murder, because how do you accidentally strangle or choke somebody to death? And if you do something like that with your partner, put them in a situation which is theoretically dangerous, and they die, too damn bad. They're dead. You should go get your murder charge and go away to prison. I don't have any sympathy whatsoever, because that's not what I call making love. So do I think she was raped and murdered? Yes. Now, maybe something started out as consensual at some point. They were walking in the park, kissy, and then he wanted more than she wanted. And so he raped and murdered her. And the jury couldn't figure it out. Said, well, maybe she did want to have rough sex, and maybe it was accidental. Good Lord. Well, yeah, Lex says autoerotic asphyxiation. Yes, there are people. Now, generally speaking, most people do this alone. They put a belt around their neck or something, and then, lose oxygen. And by bend their knees, they lose oxygen and get some happy high, and then it's better sex for them. And then they stand back up again, and that's the end of it. And sometimes they accidentally kill themselves. And there are people who will do this kind of thing with partner. They will put something around their neck, and tie it and pull it tight, and the person will start losing oxygen, or they'll put their hands there and start pressing. Well, it's not really the oxygen. You're pushing here, and you're preventing the blood from going to the head, and you get, it's like the choking game kids like to play. When you do it to yourself and kill yourself off, well, that's just stupid. That's just a shame. But if you put your little hands, I don't care if that person said you could do it. You are actually doing an act which can cause death, and you know it. And if you go over that line and kill them, I'm sorry, I'm good with murder. I'm absolutely good with murder. Well, let's see. As Vandersloot, I'm thinking about Joran Vandersloot in this particular instance. He killed 2 women. One is missing. It's hard to say. I don't believe, killed them during rough sex, or that he killed them accidentally. I'm pretty sure he has a rage problem. So I'm pretty much sure they said no, and he made sure that, and he raped and murdered them. That's what it comes down to. Wow, you got a whole list of people here. Whew. Yeah, the whole list. I did not remember this. Benny, hi Benny. He had scratches on his face. He claimed his cat did it, but the cat had its. That's pretty funny. But the cat had its claws removed before this. I guess he forgot about that. If that's introduced in court, and if he's got scratches on his face, I'm going to say it's not very consensual. I cannot believe the jury screwed that up. Yes. And so then, this is true. So then after he got out, he went back in on drug charges. Yes, he did. So he was, and the funny thing is now, well, it's not funny. It's annoying. Here's a picture of him now. Where's this picture of him now? And you see he's out of prison again. Doesn't look as cute, preppy. He's got a little gold ring on his finger. And the question is he married to his girlfriend, who is this scary creature, who was dealing drugs with him, and they both went to prison. And now he's out, and now I guess maybe they're married. Oh, isn't that sweet? So she's pretty scary, but I'm going to say, you hook up with a guy who raped and murdered somebody, you're stupid. You're stupid. What more do I have to say? So, yeah. So now he's back out. He was in for quite a while. How long was he in for? He's on strict parole until 2028. Strict parole. I wonder what that even means these days. He was previously sentenced to 15 years. That's 11. Let's see what happened. As far as a drug charge goes, he had a reputation as a drug user, heavy drinker, and petty theft. And then after he got back out, he was released in 2003. And this girl. Anyway, he had met that girl, Koval, her name is. They had met in 1986 before his trial began. And the two dated throughout his prison term. They moved in together after Chambers was released, but in 2007, both were busted for dealing hard drugs out of their Manhattan apartment. A year later, he was handed a 19-year sentence, 4 more years than his punishment for Levin's killing. It's a weird world we live in. Does this make any sense? He gets more for dealing drugs than he does for murder. Although Yeah. How romantic. Oh, isn't it sweet? Well, she waited for her man. She already knew he was a killer, but she knew he was really a good guy in spite of that. So, she waited it out, and they had 4 years together, dealing drugs, having fun, having rough sex. She didn't get killed. And then they both went to prison. But he's, now they're out, and he's got a ring. So I don't know when the maybe marriage went on, but so, Lord. Anyway, I want to get to the Oregon thing, because I think this is really interesting. This is a point I make pretty much over and over again, but this really sets this point out here. So remember this guy? Let me see if I got the right picture this time. Yeah, that dude. All right. This guy is the suspected. Well, he's a suspect in. Well, let me find it. All right. All right, here we go. His name is Jesse Calhoun. It's a great name for a movie star, but not so great for a killer. Hey, Jesse Calhoun. I know. Sounds like something from the Old West. Portland. Well, they put a thing around serial killer. Okay, we don't know that he's the serial killer. But Jesse Calhoun was released from prison early for helping fight fires. And first of all, we do not know that he killed 4 women that ended up dead, who were women who were having down on their luck, maybe unhoused, had drug problems, prostitution. And these 4 women ended up dead. He has not been charged with any of the crimes related to the investigation of these 4 women. But he has an extensive criminal history, convictions for assault, also for burglary. And so then he is out. But meanwhile, a woman who says she's Calhoun's girlfriend said that he had links to 2 of the 4 victims, revealing that Calhoun and Ashley Real, I don't know how to say her name, had been seeing each other on and off for about a year, and that he would provide Bridget Webster with drugs in exchange for sex. So these are two of the women that have been murdered. He supposedly has connections to both. Now, and then the other 2, I don't know about. Now, this is what his girlfriend says. Maybe his girlfriend's pissed at him for having sex with Bridget in exchange for drugs. We're seeing this other woman. I don't know if his girlfriend's telling the truth. So he is a suspect. He hasn't been charged with any of the 4 crimes at this point. So they've identified him. Well, he's not even a suspect, a person of interest. All right. Interesting character. Could he be a serial killer? Sure. But then we have this guy. His name is Nagazi Zuberi. Nagazi Zuberi. He looks awful young. I wonder if that's a younger picture of him, if that's how young he really is. But anyway, fascinating story about this guy. This guy, hold on a second. I'm switching. This guy has been arrested, all right, and charged. Because, now listen to this story, if you haven't heard it. There was a woman. This guy is 29 years old. Boy, he's 29 years old. Okay. He was arrested for interstate kidnapping on July 16th after a 45-minute standoff with law enforcement in a Walmart parking lot. A victim, a woman, had flagged down a passing motorist who called 911. And she stated that she had been kidnapped by him and held in his home in a makeshift dungeon. All right. Now, she was in there. Let's see what he said happened. Now, mind you, she was also a prostitute. Okay. So interesting. He picked her up for prostitution services in Seattle, some 450 miles away from his home in Klamath Falls, Oregon. He told the victim he was an undercover officer and forced her into his car using a black and yellow taser, handcuffed her arms, and put her in leg irons, the complaint said. She also said she saw a gun in the car. After driving for hours, Zuberi put a black sweatshirt over the victim's head and led her into the garage of his home where he had constructed a cinder block cell. She was placed inside the cell and he locked the door and left, saying he was going to do some paperwork. And maybe police paperwork, he's booking her into his cell. The woman fought for her life, beating the doors and walls of the cell with bloodied hands. So when they found her, then they went over there. They were able to find the place. They found the makeshift cinder block cell with a metal door, single light bulb about in the residential garage. They went in, they got a search warrant. They found the victim's purse at the residence, drawings, notes, and a firearm box matching the serial number and description of the gun the victim took from Zuberi's car. Now this is interesting. I'm not quite sure how that worked out. It says here the victim spoke as her will and determination triggered a law enforcement response and may have saved many women from a similar nightmare. Now, they are now looking through 10 different states that he has been in. He has lived since 2016 in California, Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, Florida, New York, New Jersey, Alabama, and Nevada. So the FBI is checking everywhere to see if this guy is linked to other cases. Now, at this point, it doesn't say he raped her and he didn't kill her. He might have his own claims that she stole crap. They went to his house. She tried to steal stuff from him, so he locked her up until he could call the police. He may have a story his defense attorney will come up with. But this is what I try to point out. You have a lot of bad actors out there in the world. A lot of people who have criminal records for many types of violent crimes and also burglary, which is popular among serial killers. And you have them crisscrossing each other. Sometimes you'll have one serial killer, but you'll have 6 different suspects because they look all like they could be it. So in other words, it could be this guy. It might be him who killed those four girls. Might be, or maybe it's him who killed those 4 girls. Or maybe this guy killed 2 girls and this guy killed 2 girls. Or maybe there's another guy and those guys have done other bad things, but there's some other guy that killed 4 girls, or 1 of them, or 2 of them, or 3 of them. See, this gets very tricky. So when you try to link crimes together, if you have DNA linking all 4 crimes from a perpetrator, well, then you got clearly a serial killer, serial homicides, all linked. If that doesn't exist, and one woman has been raped and there's unknown DNA, another woman has just been beaten to death, maybe you're not sure about the rape, but there's no DNA, and another woman, you see, maybe another woman looks like maybe it was a drug overdose of some sort, and then somebody, I don't know, hit her body, strangled her or whatever, so she wouldn't rat them out. You don't know that these 4 women were killed by the same guy or in the same way. And you can't be sure that Jesse Calhoun was the guy who perpetrated those crimes or the other guy, or this guy. We don't know. So the police have a hard job, and the job is trying to figure out and actually find evidence linking somebody to a crime. And then linking crimes together. It's not so easy. It helps if they were all, if 4 women are found buried under the same tree in shallow graves, and they're all murdered at different times, you pretty much know it's one guy, which is what happened in the Gilgo Beach. When they found the 4 bodies in Gilgo Beach, it would be unlikely that there was more than one guy who put those 4 bodies in that exact location. Now, when you go to Long Island serial killer Lisk, which had been including Gilgo Beach, we still are not sure whether the Gilgo Beach killer is the same guy that left other bodies. It gets a little tricky because you have time passes. It is an isolated location. Somebody else could have dumped a body out there. It's possible. So you can't jump to conclusions on cases being linked unless it's very obvious or there's DNA. And you also can't jump to conclusions that they got the right guy. So this Jesse Calhoun, he's just a person of interest, but everybody's like, oh my God, they got the guy. Do they? And now we got another fella who's out there, and he's an interesting character. So he's obviously going to be charged with the abduction case of this particular woman, unless he can get out of it somehow and say, I didn't abduct her. But it sounds like there's a lot of suspicious things hooked up with this guy. And let's see if they can link him to anything else. So it's not so easy, really, to identify. So, yeah. Let me see what you have to say here. Um, yeah, yeah. They crisscross and get. Well, the thing about this is most serial killers tend to kill near their homes or where they work. They're lazy and they also know the area really well. So they're not usually necessarily traveling far distances to kidnap people, or unless you're a trucker or something. But a lot of times, most serial killers just work near home. Um, and look at Long Island serial killer. I mean, or shall we say Gilgo Beach at this point? Look at him. If we got the right guy there, um, they were all near to his home. That's where he dumped them. So generally speaking, you work in an area where you're comfortable, and you know how the police coming and goings. You know how many people in certain areas. You know the land really well, and you can get home quickly. And if you're gonna have somebody in your vehicle, especially dead people, you don't want to have to drive around too long with them. So are there anomalies where, yeah, guys completely does some really strange stuff? Sure. But a lot of times it's where they are, the majority of them. And then you have your more unique ones. But now this guy, he did drive a long way. When he picked up this woman, he did drive a long way. So it does happen. He traveled, there were reasons I don't know that he was traveling he wasn't traveling, in my opinion. I'm trying to remember all his cases now. Traveling to get people as much as he was in areas where he got people. So he lived here, then he was over here, and then he was on the run. So when he's on the run, he was on the run. So then he, hit up the sorority house at the end because he was on the move. Danny Rowling, for example, he hit up a couple of different places. It's because he lost his housing, and then he had to go live someplace, and he ended up getting a job, and then the guy fired him from a job. I forgot, that was the one down in Louisiana, but wherever town he was in that he had the job and lost it, that's where he killed the family. And then he ended up in Gainesville. He just ended up there. He wasn't traveling to find victims. He just ended up in that town, and then that was the town he then got people. But most of the time, people, they work in their vicinity. But the problem is, even in one area, you can have a serial killer that kills in, let's say, January of 2000, and then he gets a job and a girlfriend. He doesn't kill for 3 or 4 more years. Meanwhile, some other creep is in the area, and he happens to kill, and he kills somebody five miles away. And so then the police go, well, it's only 5 miles difference. Is it the same guy? And it's tricky. It's very hard. And people sometimes, when they hear that 2 different women have been murdered in an area, they're like, oh my God, let's send up, the flags right away that there's a serial killer. But it's not necessarily true. Might be. I would say suspected serial killer. If you find a woman who's been raped and murdered in the bushes, I would say serial killer, suspected serial killer right away, because you're not going to have a one-off, somebody who just does that one time, so it will be a serial killer. But if you have a woman who's been, let's say, beaten and left in the bushes, not necessarily sexual homicide, maybe it was a drug deal gone bad, maybe she got in a fight with a boyfriend, so that isn't necessarily a serial killer. And even if they're half a mile apart. So tricky stuff, very tricky. That's true. That's interesting. Paul Bernardo moved from one Providence to another, and then the crime stats flipped. Yeah, it's like, wow, everything's so much better now where we live. Wonder what's happening over there. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Props to the abductee. Yeah, she fought. She did fight like hell. And I want to point something out. That one thing is very true. That sex workers, especially the street girls, have stopped serial killers. Why? Because they do fight oftentimes more so than perhaps a woman who is not used to being on the streets. And when they're in that car and he starts taking them someplace, Some of them, now some of them just get killed. I mean, obviously a lot of sex workers have been killed that way, but sometimes they will fight like crazy and end up bringing the guy down, so good for her. Good for her. She might have stopped a whole series. Who knows? But yeah, I'm glad she did. That's all I could say. I'm glad she survived, and I'm glad she's, was able to also know where they went to, which is interesting. I'm not quite sure, all about why she knew where she was. So that's a whole nother thing. So, but I found that interesting. I thought it was interesting to bring that up. Yeah. Now I'm wondering what that picture was. That picture I showed before. Who is that? Does anybody know who that is? Oh, it was from another show. I think it looks more like a child to me than I don't know. I can't tell. Anyway, this wasn't for the show at all. I lost my picture for that. I wanted to talk about, let me find it. All right. Oh, there's my teacher reported missing. Gee, it's got to be an easier way to do this, but I'm not sure it is. I'm trying to find out when she went missing. She went missing on Wednesday, so this is just yesterday. I'm just curious to see whether she popped up or not. Just to find out whether she's been now. So she went missing on Tuesday, and now it is Thursday. So it's been 48 hours. And you would think if she went missing taking a walk in a park, why would this be? Okay, so let me throw her name back in and see whether she's popped up. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Has she come back? I don't think so. She's been missing. Oh, nope. Still missing. Oh, she went missing over the weekend. I thought it was, she's been missing quite a while now. That's concerning. So I'm going to put past 24 hours and see. Now there's a vigil. Oh. So she's been missing now for a number of days. So it's very concerning at this point. And the question would be, did she run off when it didn't seem the kind of person that would do that to somebody grab her? She did at 8 p.m. I don't think it was quite dark at that point. It doesn't even seem like a location which she would be kidnapped out of. And she's also 55 years old. 50, what did I say? How old was she? 60? No, she's 60. She's not a 20-year-old, let me put it that way. 20-year-old for somebody like to grab a 20-year-old. So because of her age, you wonder why she would be kidnapped, or was it somebody she knew? Was there something going on family-wise? Something going on in her history that somebody had it out for her and grabbed her for that reason? Is it an ex-boyfriend? Is it an ex-husband? And so far, I haven't seen any information on who that could be, or whether she had some reason to wander off and just walk away, but I don't see it here. So, but on the heels of Russell, I mean, you kind of like, it makes you wonder, and that's the problem. Did she really? Did she really go for a walk? Well, you see, this is what the police have to ask themselves, and they have to talk to the son. She told the son she does this. It was a habit of hers that she would then come in and do her prayers. She would go for a walk before sunset prayer. That's what she told her son, and she's a third grade teacher. You would just not, she's an employed person, and she never returned. And this was a common thing she did on a daily basis. She loved walking around that little park, and I know that a park that they're talking about, and it's not like a huge park. There's another park nearby called Greenbelt Park, and that has trails and everything through it. And I wouldn't walk there by myself personally, but this is a small place. So she's just going for a pleasant walk, and it was still light outside. So I'll be curious. Maybe next week at the Hangout, I'll find out what happened to her. But it just bothers me to have people fake being victims, because when you're going to put out a tremendous effort to find somebody, you want to put that effort out because they need your help and you want to save them. But if it turns out that we have another person who's just won't run off, it's very maddening for the police. And then it just makes them not trust anybody who, oh, my sister's missing, and you roll your eyes. My kid is missing, and you roll your eyes. Because you stop believing people. So that's why I want it to be a felony. Just want it to be a felony. No, not one of her students. Well, wait a minute. If that 11-year-old girl can do what she did, maybe there's an 8-year-old out there you can't trust either. They say sometimes it's a scary thing what children can do these days. But anyway, I also want to talk about this was just a weird story. They found, get this one. So a body was found. It was a cold case. They have a body. They found a skeleton in a shallow grave in 2007. They found it was the remains of Jenna Burris, a married mom. She was 39 years old, but she was never reported missing. That's a little suspicious, don't you think? Husband never reported her missing. And interestingly enough, I'm trying to figure out when she went missing. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. It's not in the story here. Let me see if I can move it over to where the story is. Really? Okay, here we go. Oh, okay. The skeletal remains were found in 2007 in Sarasota County. And they did, they were doing DNA, and let's see, they finally got the DNA identified as this Gina Lynn Burris, 39 years old at the time of her death. She resided on the 6200 block of Pauline Avenue in Sarasota with her husband and her son, James Burris Jr. She was unemployed. Her husband was employed at a local body shop. Her son attended Gulfgate Elementary School between 2005 and 2006. She was never reported missing by her family, and her whereabouts had not been questioned. That's interesting. Clearly, the husband has some. He needs to do some splaining here, But the child never mentioned to his teachers, "Mommy's missing." The neighbors never said she went missing. Her other relatives never said, "Gee, I wonder what happened to, what's her name, Jean? What happened to Gina? What happened to Gina?" Now, I don't know if she had severe drug problems and other things, but nobody even reported her missing. So, I'm pretty sure somebody murdered her, but yeah. LS says, husband obviously killed her. Oof, yeah. Sarah maybe didn't miss her. Well, that is true. Oh, Michaela's taken off. Bye, Michaela. Yeah, it's just it's weird, It's like, wow, you'd think somebody would have said something. It goes to show you want to have family and friends who actually care about you, because if you don't, you go missing and nobody's reporting it. So, which is pretty strange, but true. Oh, here's one other really strange one. I'm going to find this one. Oh, come on. Hold on. Oh, this is not my night. I shouldn't have gone to the barbecue. Maybe the orange crush crushed me. I'm non-functional. I was trying to find I don't know why everything just went missing on me. So annoying. There was this woman, and I can't find it, but I just want to show you the picture. So the weird thing was this. It's just a strange story. This woman was found dead in her house, and what was really weird was they found her mother's body, and underneath the kitchen table had been there for like years and years and years and years. And so, it's like, again, people, when you have situations where neighbors just begin to step back and say, yeah, I those people are weird over there. I'm not going to worry about them. They, it's just whatever they get going over there. we're just not paying much mind to it. And so when people disappear in those situations, it sometimes takes anybody around them to notice for a really long time, whatever happened to our neighbor? In this case, the neighbor didn't leave the house. She died, and then they found her mother's body there as well, who had died years ago. Why her mother's body was kept underneath the kitchen table, we don't know. But obviously, some major mental problems, drug problems, who knows? But it's just like strange stuff. And, people, they can. It's like the boy in the box. Remember the boy in the box story? He went missing, and apparently nobody ever reported him missing. The school didn't report him missing. The families didn't report him missing. The relatives didn't report him missing. They just found the boy in the box, and of course, was it last year that they finally figured out who he was, but nobody reported him missing. So, it's pretty sad. Yeah, you think it's a little odd to have your mom dead under the kitchen table. Well, pretty strange indeed. but yeah, but you have people who, I say, they usually have, severe mental problems, and somehow they manage to survive in these houses. And then one day, maybe somebody smells something really bad coming from the house, and the police go in and go, "Oh my God," and it's the house from hell. It's, yeah. Let's see. A couple more things here that I wanted to touch on. Somebody said, I thought it was kind of interesting article about, who am I thinking about? Scott Peterson. The judge is like, yeah, the appeal thing. And he's like, no, go on that. He says, you've run this stupid house being burglarized story for too long, that they saw Lacey, thought she had seen them, and so they killed her, and then heard where Scott Peterson went fishing, and then dumped the body. And they're still playing that same story over and over and over again, as trying to get an appeal. Apparently, that's not going really, really well. But it's interesting when we talk about his sister, the latest claims area. His latest claims, the same claims. California Attorney General calls Scott Peterson's latest claim baseless fishing expedition. They're looking for anything, if they can get the prosecution to say something that would be useful, to come up with some other little anything that can get them an appeal. But what I really noted in this whole article is that this is how, get this one. All right. This is how he's trying to spin this. Under California law, a conviction can be overturned if new evidence exists that is credible, material, presented without substantial delay, and of decisive force and value, that it would more likely than have not change the outcome at trial. Peterson argued that this confession would have changed the outcome. What confession, you say? All right. The confession is that a witness, two new witnesses, said they heard a man confess to the murder. All right. Now, where did these witnesses come from who heard these men confess to the murder? Well, a woman messaged Peterson's sister-in-law, Janie Peterson, on Twitter. Janie Peterson, a staunch believer in Scott's innocence, and here is a woman who just, why she believes, it's almost like she's more in love with him than her husband. I think it's her brother-in-law, right? I think it's her husband's brother. I can't quite remember, but her husband ought to wonder why she's so into Scott. But anyway, she's a staunch believer in Scott's innocence and had been intimately involved in his legal procedures and even attended law school, passing the state bar in May. She maintains a website and social media pages that detail Scott's appeal process. Well, this woman on Twitter told Janie Peterson she knew of a man who, during a gathering a few months ago, confessed that he and two others burglarized the home of Susan and Rodolfo Medina across the street from the Petersons. He said they were dragging a safe out of the home when Lacey saw and confronted them, threatening to call the police. According to according to the petition, the man told the witnesses they could not afford to get caught. They had to shut her up. The men he was with killed Lacey. I mean, I guess it was a barbecue like I was just at. Maybe he had an orange crush too many and just had to say, oh, guess what, guys? I have a story for you. And so supposedly this petition identified the man as well as the witnesses who gave signed declarations saying they heard his confession, and that's only by their initials, okay? They said that's all invalid because Peterson didn't file a motion or obtain an order permitting the information to be sealed, blah, blah, blah. But the real question here is why neither of the witnesses, Jamie Peterson or anyone in Scott's defense team, went to the police about the confession. So in other words, the confession happened, but nobody actually went straight to the police and told anybody. This all comes up later, I guess, through Twitter. So it says here, she says she tried to hand over information. The authorities didn't want it. Jamie Peterson, oh my goodness. I've never seen a person believe so hard in somebody she shouldn't believe in. It just amazes me. With all the information on Scott Peterson, why she thinks this guy is innocent and spending her whole life trying to get him out of prison. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Just absolutely crazy. You need to do a show on how psychopaths fool so many people in their lives, even after their behavior is exposed. You know, that I will eventually do a whole series on psychopathy. But the long of it, or the short of it, how do you say that? The long and short of it is that people have a very hard time having somebody look at them and lie to them and think they can't believe it's done that way. I mean, people do lie about little things and all that. Most people aren't just big fat outliers. You know what I'm saying? They might say, I'm late to work because it was traffic when they just didn't get up in time, that kind of thing. But a psychopath will do something like, well, I'm late to work because a woman's car went off the road and a woman fell out of the car into the river, and I had to jump out and rescue her from the raging river. She was pregnant, 9 months pregnant. You're like, but it's outrageous. You just go, oh, really? That happened? Then you might think, well, that couldn't possibly be true. But the next day he's just looks right at you and walks right away. So it's this weird thing where people just don't understand that people can do these kind of things. Just lie and lie and lie and lie, and then lie themselves out of the lies and change the story just like that until the person seems to understand, oh, okay, I accept that one. There are people who catch on real quick and run away, but there's just people who maybe aren't that experienced with liars. And so, yeah, it's a very hard thing to understand. But the orange crush defense, I'm using that tonight for myself. Yeah, I don't know what my daughter put in that orange crush. I saw her crushing the oranges, but I'm not so sure how much vodka she rolled into that. That could be my problem. And here's an interesting question somebody asked me. I'll end with this just because I'm really sleepy, and that orange crush is crushing me. Anyway, it was just one. But somebody asked me why people take a story that is more likely to have something simple and turn into a crazier conspiracy stuff. The Panama girls, the ones where the girls went missing in Panama. I did a video on that. And there's tons of people who think, oh no, those girls were kidnapped. Their kidneys were taken. They're pulled into a sex ring. They're this, they're that. And there's all these theories. Well, it's interesting. A lot of times when it comes down to certain cases, when there's not an absolute clear answer, people they tend to believe there's something very nefarious. It has to be so nefarious that the simple answer is simply wrong. And then it usually comes down to law enforcement is corrupt, planted evidence, somebody who was involved was from the police department are protecting him, or they're protecting the governor or the governor's son. Then it can be sex rings of major politicians. It's got to be something bigger, and it's kind of like the boogeyman type thing, where you can't quite put your finger on it, but you believe it's there, out there, shrouded somehow. And I suppose it's a more interesting story, and because you don't like the simple answer, or just the simple answer leaves too many questions in your head because you don't understand the simple answer. The Panama Girls, for me, it's a simple case of the girls getting lost and dying. And to me, since they kept trying to use the telephone to try to get help, these young ladies, they kept using the phone. Well, if they've been kidnapped, nobody's going to leave a phone with them. So how would they have the phone over days if they were kidnapped? They wouldn't have the phone. So, and they wouldn't be trying to call. It wasn't 911, it's 000, whatever it is in Panama. And then their backpack was found, and there was still money in it and everything. And it made no sense that anybody else was involved. But man, all over the place, massive conspiracy theories on that, and many, many other cases that I've talked about that have that not absolute answer. People go that way. And the other reason I think people do it is a lot of people have a lot of rage at the government, the police, fear, and a lot of fears of where you're out of control, where, there's bad people out there doing things like, like people will kidnap you and force you to do something you don't want to do, or take your kidneys or whatever the thing is. And if you travel any place, there's these bands of people always coming after you. The cartel will get you in Mexico, where something bad is going to happen to you. And it's this fear of what's out in the world, and this rage at not being able to control those things that you think exist. And we don't control a lot of things. And some of those things do exist, but not necessarily in the cases that I'm talking about. It's just that just a small group of ideas people have that they glom onto something they don't understand. And I think rage, fear, sometimes boredom is just not good enough story. You just gotta make it a bigger and bigger and bigger story. But it's interesting how this happens. Now, mind you, there are conspiracies in the world. So, and there are conspiracies, but not the kinds that people think there are. There's more specific conspiracies, groups of people that do certain things. And sometimes there is corruption. And sometimes there are, sex traffickers, and there's some kidnappings in certain countries, and sometimes here. I mean, there's things that happen, but not usually the way people think. And it's frustrating because it's hard to get people to look at evidence as opposed to exaggeration or fictionalization, where you take an idea and then just run with it to something. It's like with the dingo story, that because they were Seventh-day Adventists, they were sacrificing a child. It's like, what? I can see where you think maybe she killed the child, or maybe the dingo did it. Okay, those are the two basic realities. Either you have a mother's with kind of a Munchausen thing going, a Munchausen by proxy thing, or maybe you had a mother who just hated the kid and knocked her off, or you had a dingo that took the kid. But suddenly to have all this religious stuff tossed into it, and she's out sacrificing the child on top of a rock someplace, is probably not so. And so it's like you take something that's much more basic and it's exploded out. And it's frustrating when you see that happen. And it's frustrating for the families of victims too, because sometimes they're encouraged to believe things that also aren't true. And sometimes sometimes the families also want to go down those rabbit holes and those conspiracy theories because they can't accept the basic truth of some things, which are just like your kid committed suicide, or your child made a bad choice. There are no smiley face killer. What is it? The smiley face killer, whole group of smiley face killers who kill college men across the United States and drown them. They just leave a face painted on a smiley face. But they don't leave any evidence of anybody being involved in the crime. They're so incredible. And when in reality, it's just sad, drunk college kids falling into the water. But, people are funny about that stuff. They really are. They're very, it's just amazing sometimes when you see some of the stories that come out. And then you have to understand, too, there's grifters. And a grifter knows that a simple story is worth one video, but a conspiracy theory is worth 50. You can write an article on something. I've had a blog where I used to have a blog. It was called The Daily Profiler, and then it got less daily, and then it got weekly, and then it got nothing. The No Profiler. But I did it for quite a while, and my articles, I might have a case I wanted to talk about, and there was an article about it. And somebody would say something like, well, why don't you write a book about this? And I'm like, because it only deserves an article. I mean, I don't need to do more than a blog post. There's nothing. What else am I going to say? But if I make a conspiracy theory out of it, I got an entire book. So watch out for the grifters that will, pull you into these conspiracy theories and exaggerations because it makes some money. So, but it's an interesting question. Why do we, sometimes that could be me, get pulled into a more exaggerated version? And some things are tricky. Like some people will say, for example, JonBenet Ramsey, why would you think the parents have anything to do with it? Why wouldn't you just think there's a person who broke in and killed the child? Why would you go think anything else? And some people would call that a conspiracy theory against the family. But it depends on the evidence. And that's what you have to keep going back to the evidence. What does the evidence say? And like the evidence in the Panama girls. All right, the Panama girls, there was specific pieces of evidence which said they were in control of their phone and their backpack, and nobody else touched either one of them. So what kind of kidnappers are those? Oh, so it's that basic. And so you got to go focus in on the evidence, and that keeps one from going off onto crazy conspiracy theories. And the same thing with like the Madam Khan case. I've heard so many bizarre conspiracy theories. It drives me nuts. And there's only two things that happen: an accidental death in the house, or somebody kidnapped the child. That would be a predator, sex predator, like the German guy, Christian B. Or child was left alone, came to harm while she was alone, maybe over-medicated, and there was a cover-up by the family. But there was not a huge sex ring where she's been, there was a planned kidnapping of the little blonde girl, and they came in, and then she's been shuttled all over Europe for 20 years. And I think the Podestas are involved somehow. And then there's people who think she didn't get, nothing happened that night. It happened 3 days before. And there was this big, huge plan. And there's all kinds of, perversion going on there. And then they're carrying around fake babies. And I mean, it's just nonsense stuff. Because they're not looking at evidence. They're creating a story, creating fiction. So one has to be very careful of creating fiction if you're doing profiling. Don't go further than you need to go. Now just look at what you need to look at. And also, another way to not, as a profiler, not to go off on some kind of tangent, is to say, until I know more, I have no place else to go with this. I'll have to stop right here. People have asked me in the JonBenet Ramsey case, who do I think did it? All right, let's say I'm looking at the family. And we have Patsy, John, Burke. All right. John Ramsey has been out there saying, we're still looking for the person. We're still looking for the person for years. If Patsy had done anything, first of all, I always thought that JonBenet was like, Patsy lived vicariously through that child. She loved the beauty pageants. She was all into that stuff. Little apple of her eye made her life complete. I can see no real good reason she'd be killing off that child, even in a rage. I just can't see it. And I can't see John covering up for her, because she was doing chemo at the time. And you could say, well, he could say if she had chemo rage and, she just, under severe stress, and she could go off to a mental institution, and then he could just raise his son and get new girlfriends, and women feeling sorry for him if she did it. I don't think he would have gone to any protective length. Now, let's say he did protect her. Now she's dead. Wouldn't be that hard for him to say, hey, I didn't want my son to know back then when he was a child. Now he's a grown up, and I'd have to say, she lost her temper. You could say that now. And what's going to happen? Not much, but he's not saying that either. So I personally think Patsy has nothing to do with it. Let me rephrase that. That Patsy, she was not the person who provoked whatever happened. She certainly could have been involved at some point and after the fact. And that gets complicated. But other than that, I don't know. And so I just have to leave it at that. There's not enough evidence to prove something. And when there's not enough evidence to prove something, you eventually just have to leave it alone. And until evidence pops up. Because otherwise, what good does it do? Where are you going to go with it? So, no, I think the Ramsey case will probably just go unsolved. I think the McCann case will go unsolved. Because unless somebody confesses, I don't think they're going to get anywhere with them all. So, yeah. Yeah, this is a good way to put it. Things aren't always the way people think they are. Yeah, that's true. Sometimes the whole police force is bunk. It can be, but one has to be sure that one is not exaggerating in each specific instance. I mean, I have a gripe on a case, but I don't blame the entire police force for it. I blame certain aspects of what happened, people who were in power, and there was politicians involved, things that were easier for them to do than not do. I can't get into that right now. I have to wait a couple years for a FOIA request that I'm going to be putting in there. I look at there are some cases where I think like Superbike's murders down in South Carolina, the ones I worked on. I think the sheriff's a crook and a liar. I've said it in public before, and I'll say it again. Sheriff Wright is wrong, and he's a liar and a crook. And also, there are some people who allowed him to get away with what he did by essentially adding on the Superbike's murder to as a way for him to close the case down, to have somebody confess to the murders that clearly wasn't there. And people look the other way because they're like, oh, sick of this whole thing. And so everybody went home happy, except it's not true. So yes, there are times when, and if you're interested in Superbike's murder and you never know what I'm talking about, just please go and look at the whole. It's very complicated. I worked on that, and I've got a very good video on it. Go check it out. Superbike's. Todd Kohlhepp is the guy who confessed to the Superbike's murders. He was a serial killer, but then he confessed to that as well, and his confession is not correct. That is not the way the murder went down, and I know it because I worked on the case. So, so there are times there's no such thing as every police officer is a good person, or every police chief is totally not corrupt. Every politician's a great guy who just wants to help the community. We know that they're human beings, and they have levels of stuff that go on with them. And sometimes there are groups. All I'm saying is that when you're doing profiling, now this is the difference. This is the difference between when you're working as a profiler as opposed to just having an opinion. Okay. We can all have any opinion we want. We can think whatever we want to think. But if you're doing profiling, that's what the channel's about. You have to look at that and say, is there evidence of this, or am I just pissed off? Do I just want to point fingers? Do I just want to say, hey, I think that's going? I don't like that police chief. And so there's some out there you just don't like. Doesn't mean they're corrupt. It just might not like them, or you might think that they're doing something shady when they're just not very bright. You're just kind of stupid. and you got this stuff wrong. So let me just tell you what I'm doing this weekend. I'm going to be doing the case of hold on a second. I am doing the case of Jennifer Pandos. There is HBO Max has a show on Jennifer Pandos called Burden of Proof. Her brother has been trying to find out for decades what happened to his 15-year-old sister. And some of the police work was inept. And some of the stuff I see, even on that show, is inept. Some of it just makes me scratch my head. And some people, I think, I think they're well-meaning, but I think they're wrong. So there's a lot that goes into it, but a lot of times it's not a conspiracy. It's just people just maybe not that good at what they do. So, or people wanting to earn money. And they're willing to cooperate in ways that maybe they shouldn't if they didn't want to earn that money. That's what I'm saying about this fiction stuff. You can take a story and you can blow it all up, and you can do 50 videos on YouTube. The girl that went into what was the girl's name that went into the water? She was driving home from a party and she went into the water, and they found her body in the car, but there were so many channels that did like 50 videos saying that she was murdered, and it wasn't true. And it's dishonest, but people do it because it gets them views and it gets them excited. And some of them even think it's true because they don't have any skills in profiling. They just think it's true. Thank you. That's correct. Carlee Rodney. Kylie Rodney. Kylie Rodney. I know how to say her name. Yeah, Rodney. Wait a minute. Oh, I should agree. That's a weird one. Did you check out my video on that if you haven't been there yet? But that's that was a strange one. If I get murdered, I want you, Pat, to look into my death. I'll remember that. Who's suing for defamation? Is that the Rodney case? Is that who's suing? Hold on a second. Oh, that is a weird case too. Lindsay Buziak, and I also did a show on that one. That is one weird one. So when this Jennifer Pandos, to me, I think I know who did it. Okay, I'm going to say that right now. In my analysis, I believe I know who did it, and I'm going to tell you, there's, in my opinion, evidence that can be analyzed to say who did it. All right, so I'm just going to leave it at that. That'll be Saturday at 3:00. But the show Burden of Proof goes into some crazy stuff. Again, just they made I think it's made 4 hours out of it, which should have been one. It was like watching paint dry. It was really boring. I mean, you got to see all the relatives, you got to see all the suspects, you got to see the police, you got to see the PI, the handwriting analyst. They got everybody in there. It was so slow. But they stretched that out in order to dramatize. And I would have preferred it to be much more concise, but that's not the way it was. So, but it's an interesting case, and I think that the evidence in it is fascinating. That's my opinion, and that it does point to a specific person, which the show came up with at the end. They don't know. Now they're like, we don't know. They have no. I take that back. They're now pointing to a particular suspect, which is interesting to me because. There's really no evidence pointing to that suspect. So I just find it interesting how they are really going there. And that's, yeah, I'm wondering if that person's going to sue. You kind of wonder, I'm not a big person on lawsuits, but every once in a while you wonder, can they get away with that? But anyway, all right. Sorry, I was discombobulated tonight. I really was. I should have been here at 7. I was awake at 7, but by 9 I was kind of, anyway. I'm going to also, there's coming up. I have one thing coming up, which as soon as it's cleared by YouTube, I should be putting it up. It is still under review. I'm doing a thing. There's a movie out called Missing, and it is the story about Lucy Blackman, who was a British woman who went missing in Japan. She was a hostess in Japan, and she was murdered by a guy named Joji Obara. And so I'm putting up a video on that. It's called "Why Was He a Serial Offender?" Why was he a serial offender? Actually, I had to change the wording. I think they're demonetizing me for wording because I said rapist. I don't know if that's allowed in the title, so I changed it to offender. But why was he a serial rapist? And he has a really interesting. I found his his reasons for being a rapist interesting. And I don't think anybody's ever talked about that. So, and then also, how did he get away with it for so long? Because supposedly he might have raped between 150 and 400 women. And how did he get away with it? And he was a millionaire, by the way. So fascinating. So there's the Netflix show is called Missing, the Lucy Blackman case. So you can watch that. And I also have, when I put it up, I'll also have a link to a YouTube show, which has a documentary style. But it's really interesting. But I wanted to point out how this guy operated and why he did what he did. So anyway, that will be coming up as that's your favorite word, discombobulate. I remember when my aunt said that when I was like an 8-year-old or something, when she said, "I'm very discombobulated." And we thought it was the funniest damn word. And we laughed and laughed when we made fun of my aunt forever using that word. But now I kind of can relate. I can totally relate. Hold on, one more thing here. What does Loretta say? What? Seriously, what? I look lovely tonight? Is the lighting better or something? Yeah, I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling nauseous ever since dinner. But thank you for I got 30,000 subscribers. Yes. Putting up with us. Oh, that's why I have patrons and not the entire world coming to lives. Your silly comments. No, that makes me smile. That's why I love having the group here, because otherwise I'm just talking to a camera all the time, and it's very lonely and it's not as much fun. So I'm glad to have my patrons here for my Hangouts and for my live shows. It makes it more lively. So no, I appreciate you all, and I appreciate you supporting the channel, because yes, this is just over the 2-year mark. I'm now at least functional as a channel, so that I can continue, which is great, because I've got so much more I want to do with the channel. I just wanted to be able to hang in here long enough. But thank you for saying I don't look like total crap. Really feel terrible. So I don't know whether I just ate too much grease or I don't think it was the Orange Crush. I'm blaming my daughter on that, but I don't know that. I don't think she doused me with that much vodka, because I don't feel any of it. So I just don't feel great. So. But anyway, thank you for being here. So anyway, look forward to the one I'm going to do on Joji, that serial rapist guy. I think it's a very interesting issue, and I look forward to seeing you on Saturday at 3:00. And I think that's going to be a really interesting case as well. I love to pick a case which gives me something to actually analyze. And that case, it has a note in it. Reminds me a bit of JonBenet Ramsey case. There's a note left. Who wrote the note and why did they write it? So that's what we're going to be. So, oh, Lex, oh, that's nice. Well, all the stuff is still here. It's just all available. You can watch it anytime you want. All the other cases, and hopefully I'll be around for a little bit longer. So, thank you very much. I think I just need to go to bed. Well, thank you all for being here. So, the show must go on. So we don't want to not have a show, that would be terrible. But thank you for being here. And if you're new again, and you made it through my blithering discombobulation tonight, please come back and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.